welcome to the weekly album anniversary recap show. My name is Caleb, or Caleb the Spy, on Twitter and Instagram, and every day on those social media sites I post about what I call album anniversaries, and it's just the anniversary of the album's release date. I've been doing this for a couple years with just some of my favorite albums, and then in the last year or so, I have added a ton of albums to my calendar, including every album I own, as well as a bunch of recommendations from people I've gotten to know on Twitter over the last year or so. Now I post a whole bunch of them. I try and listen to as many of these, and there was a moment this week where it really felt like I'm just so glad I do this because I had such a good day listening to music. And that's why I do this. And so I post about these on social media. I love the engagement. It's fun to talk with people. It's fun to hear from people. And for me, it's just a good opportunity to pull out an album that you maybe haven't listened to in a little bit, throw it on, and enjoy it. Of course, with all those albums to talk about, I don't always have time. So I started this podcast so I could sit back, take some time, and just talk about some of my favorites or albums that mean a lot to me. Just ones, that speak to me in a way, or just ones that are celebrating a big anniversary, and I felt like it'd be fun to talk about. So either way. Anyway, we also sometimes we'll talk about what I've been listening to, what I've been into, or news. I got a couple things that I'm going to talk about today. I'll just preface this. This week I was like, I'm going to keep it short. I'm really going to do it. I'm not going to keep it short. There was a lot I wanted to talk about. There's a ton of albums I didn't even get to this week, and I have a lot to say. So it's my show. I'm going to do what I want. So I'll apologize up front. Sorry, this is probably going to go on for just a little bit. I'll try and keep it somewhat short, but I got a lot to say this week. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about some news. This week, one of the days that happened, I can't remember what it was. I think it's February 7th. February 7th, I think it's every year, I think it rotates. Anyway, sometime in early February, every year, late January, early February, we have what's called International Clash Day. And this is a tradition that was started back in 2013, I think, by a radio station out in Seattle or Portland, one of those two areas. And it's a fairly famous radio station, KEXP. Sorry about that. And the story goes, if I remember, that the DJ just he played a Clash song, and some people called in and were like, hey, I really like that. You should play more of that. And they just kept on playing Clash songs over and over, just new, more songs. And it kind of morphed into this tradition. So on that day, I tend to listen to a lot of Clash. I think I listened to the 3 Clash albums that I own on vinyl. I listened to them in the afternoon. It was a good day for me. It was a day I didn't have any meetings at work, so I was able to just keep on pounding away at work and throw stuff on the turntable. And it was great. It was a great way to celebrate International Clash Day. They are my second favorite band ever. Their album London Calling is my second favorite album of all time. I love the Clash. They're a punk band. Don't let anybody tell you any different. Celebrate International Clash Day every year. All right, so here's some other news. The other little piece of news is the Decemberists released a new song called Burial Ground, and they're doing a tour. I'm hoping we get an album soon. It's been like 5 years, maybe 6, since we've gotten anything from the Decemberists. I hope we get something soon. But a new song called Burial Ground, you should check it out. Thought it was worth listening to. And then this week, I sometimes will just talk about what I've been listening to a lot. I'm seeing PFR. Originally, they were named Pray for Rain, but because of a legal issue, they switched to Pray for Rain. They switched to PFR. Anyway, I'm seeing them this weekend. I'm recording this a little early on Friday night, so the week isn't really done, but recording this a little early because tomorrow night I'll be out at the PFR show. Really excited to see them. I've been listening to a lot of their music this week in preparation, and man, they're really good. I really enjoy them. I really hope they play, what is it called? Blind Man, Deaf Boy. I hope they play that song. I think that's my favorite song by PFR, which is kind of weird, but I love that song. I love them. Been listening to a lot of PFR. All right, let's jump into the album anniversaries. Bob Dylan's The Times They Are A-Changin was released in 1964, so celebrating, if I got my math correct, which I'm not good at, as you know, 60 years.
Come gather round, people, wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accept it that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving, then you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone. Oh, the times they are a-changin'.
This was Mr. Dylan's third album, and it is his first album with all original material. The first album was a lot of covers. I think most of them were covers. Second album, I think only had one. I think I was talking to my dad today about it, and he said only one. And then this one is all original songs. And that was the first album that he did that had that. And this is a protest album. There's no way around it. You listen to this song, by my dad's count, it was 6 of the 10 songs are really protest songs. And this really was his album in a lot of ways that really set his tone for a little bit. I think the album before did that as well, but this kind of cemented him as a protest artist in a lot of ways. I'm saying protest. I'm going to see how poppy my P's get on this recording. Anyway, protest. He was kind of set himself as a protest artist, and as I've talked about before, my dad is a huge Bob Dylan fan. I was absolutely raised on Bob Dylan. I like to make the joke that by the age of 10, I could probably sing most of Like a Rolling Stone. So I was raised on Bob Dylan. So let's start with what my dad thinks about this album. Things that stuck out to my dad about this album was that he was only 23. Now, my dad was younger when this came out, so this was not an album that he discovered till he was later. But Dylan was 23 when this came out. 6 of these 10 songs are protest songs. And my dad's favorite song off this album is the 7-minute song, God Is On Our Side, which he did admit Joan Baez's version is better, just because she's maybe got a better voice. But this is his favorite song off the album, God Is On Our Side. And what he really thinks is interesting, and this you can tell the difference between my dad and me, is he really likes how it's a 7-minute song. He likes the length of it, and he likes how this is a over 40-minute album. And in fact, he said he kind of became a thing for him that, if there wasn't a 5-minute long song on one of the songs on the Dylan albums, and he kind of made the joke, oh, it's not worth it. And he really felt like that was kind of a little bit of a revolutionary change to rock and roll. And this is Dylan, still just a folk artist. In fact, that's one of my complaints about this album, if I'm going to register a complaint, is that there is almost no variety on this album, which, again, that's going to happen in genres. He was still doing folk music at the time. So it's him, it's the acoustic guitar, and it's him saying all these, really interesting words. That was really a revolutionary change. You had the Beatles doing these 2-minute songs. They'd put out an album and it'd be 20 minutes. You maybe got 30 minutes if you were lucky. And here's Dylan with a 40-minute album. He's got a 7-minute song on it. He's got a 5-minute song on it. It's much longer. And that was really interesting. That was something that was, really different. And George Harrison once said, this again stuck out to my dad. George Harrison, I think or John Lennon were talking about how Dylan really brought the language and words to rock. Those are some of my dad's thoughts on it. I will say it's a much more serious album. There's less of his kind of jokey feeling. And, that was kind of a criticism of the album when it came out. And like I said, there is not a lot of variety, but let's be honest. This is a classic. It's great. Absolutely worth a listen. I would argue those early Dylan albums are required listening at some point. If you're going to say you're a music fan, good to digest them. So there you go. The Times They Are a-Changin' by Bob Dylan, released in 1964. Probot by Probot, released in 2004, so celebrating a 20-year anniversary. This is a collection of heavy metal songs written by Dave Grohl. He did all the instrumentals on these, and this was really kind of after the Oh Man, There's Nothing Left to Lose album that he had put out. He started kind of messing around with this. Even though this came out in 2004, I think it was kind of after that tour, he got home and he had been singing all these, a little more melodic songs, and he sat down and realized, I really kind of miss my heavier roots. And so he went back and he just went into the studio and started recording these heavy songs. They were kind of just for his own fun. I think the story goes he took about 45 minutes per song, cranked him out, and just started doing it. He never really intended to release them. And then the idea came that like, hey, I should get some maybe of my the legends of these heavy metal bands that I was into. I should go find them, see if I can get some of them to sing on it. And all of a sudden it had legs. And so it ended up coming out as an album called Probot. So it is Dave Grohl doing these heavy metal songs and then getting these, kind of historically sound singers to sing on them. Why should you check this album out? Here are my thoughts on why you should check it out. One, this is 2004 for me is a transitional time. Five Iron has been broken up for all of 4 months. And I had really enjoyed the last couple Foo Fighters albums. I was kind of getting into them. And what I really, really like about Dave Grohl and what this is, why the Foo Fighters, I know they are dad rock, they are a little generic, but why the Foo Fighters were important to me is that they were a band that was constantly Dave Grohl specifically is a guy who was constantly making references to his influences. He is constantly giving props to previous bands. He talks about Queen. He talks about Motorhead. He talks about heavy metal. He talks about the Beatles. He is this constant reference to music he loves. And that was really eye-opening for me. I've talked a lot about the idea that my scene probably when I was in high school was the Christian music scene. It wasn't really until after college that during college a little, it happened at the end of high school and then college, but really my branching out happened after college. And it was because of the Foo Fighters in a lot of ways where I really started to go back more. That's when I really started to dive into like bands like Led Zeppelin and really check them out and give them a hearty look, because I think a lot of Christian bands don't do this. I've said this before on Twitter probably, that I don't think a lot of Christians band do that. They would always look to the side. They'd look for contemporaries to compare themselves to. I remember MXPX got compared to NoFX. They didn't get compared to previous punk bands. These alternative bands that I was into there, that's why there was that poster that said, if you like Nirvana, you'll like Wish for Eden. Not true. If you like this band, if you like Radiohead, you'll like this band. Probably not going to be true. You're probably going to be disappointed. But there was that constantly happening in the Christian music scene where that's why the Foo Fighters were so important to me, is that they were looking back. And this album is Dave Grohl looking back on metal. Now, I've said I'm not a huge metal guy, but this was good for me to digest. This was really fun for me to learn about some of these people, because I remember getting this album because I was really getting into the Foo Fighters and I was like, sure, I want to check this out. And I remember flipping through and then going and kind of trying to figure out who these guys were and what bands they played in. And again, this level of metal, because you're going to listen to this, and if you listen to this and you're a metalhead, you're going to be like, this isn't metal. And it's not crazy intense metal like a lot of people are. And it's kind of still a little mellow, a little mainstream. And that's good for me. And so I really appreciate it. That's what this album means to me, is it's kind of this, it's such a quintessential Dave Grohl looking back. And for me, it was really important. For me, it was really exciting to look back and see, what else had been done and out there. So that's Probot from 2004. I absolutely think you should check it out just because it's a really fun listen. I'll tell you, I don't know if it's on Spotify, because I don't stream stuff. I have my own music collection. The hidden track on it is by Jack Black. So that alone is probably worth checking out the album for. All right, I said I was going to try and keep this short, and then I said I'm not going to try and keep this short. So what am I doing? I don't know. There was a lot of great music this week, and I couldn't get to it all. I'll be honest, there's two albums that I kind of listened to that I wish I would have spent other time listening to stuff, and I just haven't had time. I'm also recording a little early, so I got 2 days still here where I'm going to probably go back and get in a couple things, but because of my schedule this week, I haven't had a chance to get to everything. It's the way it goes. So there's two albums that actually are celebrating big birthdays. I think also big anniversaries. Also 2004. I believe it's Sunday, the 10th? No, the 11th. I think the 11th has like all of these. The Times They Are Changing, Probot. Then Norah Jones is Far From Home and College Dropout by Kanye West, also celebrating 20 years for both of those albums. I didn't listen to them yet. Maybe I will, but so those are ones that are celebrating big anniversaries. I just want to give them a little shout out. And but I'm not going to talk any more in depth about them because I haven't had a chance to revisit them this week. Bad Brains by the Bad Brains, their self-titled album, 1982. This is classic. It's groundbreaking stuff. I will say I think I like the history of this album and this group probably maybe even more than the music at times. But this is great. If you are into hardcore punk stuff, this is a must listen in my opinion. It's one of those things. So if you should you check this out. If you're into hardcore punk stuff and you have not listened to the Bad Brains self-titled album, yes, go back, listen to it, check it out, learn something. It's great. That's why it's worth listening to. Fernando Ortega had 2 albums that were celebrated during this week. One is Hymns of Worship that came out in 2003, and then Storm, which came out in 2002. Yes, I flipped those. I don't know why I did that. What can I appreciate about this? This is not my normal thing. This is that adult contemporary CCM stuff. I will say, though, his voice is super soothing, really good. Off of Hymns of Worship, Give Me Jesus is a great song. I really, really appreciate that song. And I listened to Storm this week at one point during the week, and it was great. Absolutely great. If you want something that's soothing, again, it's Christian, so beware. Not everybody who listens to my show is necessarily into Christian music. You get a little of both. Sorry about that, if that bugs you. But really soothing, really great to listen to. Seems like a genuine musician. Again, I generally worship music, bugs me, and adult contemporary stuff doesn't move me. Check it out if you're looking for something just calm to have on in the background, maybe. Really, really good stuff. Especially Storm, 2002 release Storm. Another artist with 2 albums that came out during the week or were celebrated during the week was Bob Mould. One is District Line from 2008, and the other one was Sunshine Rock from 2019. I don't know what it is about Bob Mould. It's probably the bit of the Minnesota connection, the Husker Du, but I love his work. I love his stuff so much. It's really great. Both of these albums are really solid. District Line is good, and Sunshine Rock is great. I actually think Sunshine Rock is a great introduction to Bob Mould, and it's a much later in his career, obviously, 2019. He's been making music since the early 80s. It's a great introduction to him. I don't know why. I think he really hit on all cylinders. The album after that, not so much, because I think he released another one since 2019, and he had some clunkers before that, but these are both great. District Line and Sunshine Rock. Why should you check it out? If you like alternative rock that's got a little bit of melody and some nice good hooks, these are good for you. You should go check them out. And, Bob Mould's the grandfather of alternative rock, in my opinion. The father of alternative rock? He'd probably be annoyed being called a grandfather. Sorry, Bob. I know you're not listening. You should go check these out if you like alternative rock, and especially if you like Nirvana, if you like the sounds of 90s alternative rock, you owe some of that to Bob Mould. So go check out, especially Sunshine Rock. I think that's a good one, although District Line's great as well. Steve Taylor and the Danielson Foil, they came out with an EP in 2016 called Woe to the Deadness. This was a very brief supergroup. I believe it was a Kickstarter. I believe it was produced by Steve Albini, who, ironically, I just mentioned Nirvana. He produced their final album, their final studio album, and it's good. It's very weird. So if you like weird stuff, if you like the Danielson family, I think that's how you say it, you should check this out. So this is kind of a crazy supergroup. They went for weird stuff. They succeeded. There's, I think, 1 or 2 songs on it that stick out to me. The rest is, it's fine. But there you go. Steve Taylor and the Danielson Foil. I mentioned a couple albums that I listened to that I kind of wish I wouldn't have spent as much time on. And here's one of them, and it's a sad one for me because it's Elvis Costello. It's Spike from 1989. I love Elvis Costello, especially those first couple albums. This one is, it's okay. There's a couple really solid songs. The cover is absolutely outrageous. Go check out the cover. What a ridiculous, it's like Pee Wee Herman's Playhouse. It's totally bizarre. But yeah, I love Elvis Costello. This one's a little long, and I will say I prefer the earlier work. 2 albums by Pray for Rain. Now, neither of these do I know the release date for. I just threw them on my calendar. I threw them together. I don't know why. Maybe I should have spread them out, but they're self-titled, which is ironic. They're self-titled named Pray for Rain, even though they're technically The name of their band is PFR, but again, they had to switch it. That was released in 1992, and then Goldie's Last Day was released in 1993. What has been really interesting about doing all of these album anniversaries is you get things like this where you start looking up like, oh, this is their second or third album. And then you realize that they put out 3 albums in 3 years for some of these groups. Things just were used to be different. Now you get 2 years minimum, I feel like, between albums. Anyway, whole other conversation. But again, I'm seeing PFR tomorrow. I'm really, really excited. I've been listening to all of their albums. In fact, I listened to every PFR song I have, all 55 of them. So I listened to all of them. But these 2 albums were kind of got a post this week. The first 4 songs off of Pray for Rain are absolutely great. Goldie's Last Day is a great song off of Goldie's Last Day. There's a couple other really, really great songs. Overall, I think I like the self-titled a little better than Goldie's Last Day, and then Great Lengths is still probably my favorite by them, probably. But I'm really, really excited to see them. Both of these albums are really good if you can find them. I think they're on streaming. I think so. Sorry, again, I don't stream stuff, so I'm really cruddy when it comes to that. But yeah, PFR, Pray for Rain, and Goldie's Last Day, 1992 and 1993. At the start of the show, I talked about this moment where I had this week where I just was so thankful that I actually tracked these albums, that I look back at them, and that I pull them up. And it was the day that we had Link 80's 17 Reasons, Jay Dilla's Donuts, and Spanish Love Songs' Brave Faces, Everyone. All 3 of those albums, I believe, are on the same day, or they're a day apart. But I listened to all of them, and I just had such a great time listening to them. So let's talk about each of them. Link 80, 17 Reasons, released in 1996 technically, but then a physical release in 1997. No, that doesn't make any sense because there wasn't digital. So it was released in 1997. This thing rules. It's right up my alley. It's the punk, it's the ska, it's a little DIY. Came out on Asian Man Records. You know, it's got a sad story. There's no way around it. Lead singer would end up, I think he committed suicide. I probably shouldn't be talking about it if I don't understand. It was a drug overdose or it was suicide. Sad stuff. He was really young. They put out 2 albums with him, and then I think they tried as somebody else. One of the members of the later years of Link 80 went on to be an Omnigon. Adam Davis, I believe is his name. Omnigon's great. It was one of my favorite albums of last year. Their album No Faith from, I want to say 2019 is just amazing. Really like them, and they're really in the spirit of Link 80, that kind of ska core, really heavy on the punk side at times, but great stuff. You should totally go check out 17 Reasons by Link 80. If for any reason it's funny to see the New Kids on the Block shout out that gets into that album, absolutely great. So that was one album from that day. The other one was Jay Dilla's Donuts, which came out in 2006. I love instrumental albums. I love hip-hop instrumental albums. I think they're great, especially if your head's down on something, you're working. I love being able to put on an instrumental album. And this, by a lot of people, is considered one of the greatest hip-hop instrumental albums of all time. And I did not know the story about this. He got really sick. I think he almost died. And he did most of this album in his hospital room, which is incredible. It's absolutely great. That's another one. If you have not checked out Donuts by Jay Dilla from 2006, do yourself a favor, go check it out. It's interesting. At the very least, it's going to be an interesting, unique experience. And while you're listening to it, if you can think about it, think about the fact that he did it all in his hospital room. Absolutely fantastic. Last one from that day and from this kind of experience is Spanish Love Songs. I want to say Brace Yourselves, Everyone, but it's Brave Faces, Everyone from 2020. This is great. It came out in February, right before the pandemic hit. And every listen to this album and to No Joy and to, I can't remember their second album. I can see it. I don't want to say it wrong because I feel like if I say it wrong, it could be inappropriate. They grow on me every listen. I want to pull out a quote from Manic Pixie Meme Boy. He said, this dropped before the pandemic, and yet somehow the themes of isolation, working class angst, and mental health struggles only became more poignant as the year went on. Great commentary on it. It was his favorite album of 2020. Great stuff by Spanish Love Songs. Another album that I wish I wouldn't have spent as much time on, although I didn't listen to the full 2-disc, is Street Feeling from 2005 by The Selector. This is a greatest hits ? It's not really a greatest hits. I believe it's a collection from when they were on another record label after they were on the Two-Tone label. I don't know what this is. I will say that I think The Selector is a severely underrated two-tone group. Most people think about Madness, they think about the Specials. The Selector is absolutely great. Absolutely. One of the first bands to have a female person of color as a lead singer. The second disc off this is all live stuff, which is really good. I think they're really underrated. Is it a greatest hits? I don't think so. It's missing a couple of their really, really big song. It's kind of, I think their first big hit isn't even on this. So it's an interesting collection. I have their first 2 albums, which I don't think any of the songs from those albums are on here. So I think that's why I got it. But The Selector, Street Feeling from 2005. Here's another one I'm going to totally mess up the name for. It's by Bomb the Music Industry, the Jeff Rosenstock Music Collective. It's called Adults, Smart, S-Hammered, and Excited by Nothing. And yes, I censored myself there because if your kids are listening, I'll avoid the curses. Came out in 2010. It's 7 songs, 21 minutes of pure chaos. I will say, in general, I don't love this song. I don't love this album. It's good. It's fine. But the only song that I really, truly love off this album, and this is what you got with the Bomb the Music Industry, is at times it was pure chaos. The song I like the most, I can't even say it. So it's the song called The First Time I Met Sanawan. I know I'm messing that up. As we get older, every day feels longer, and although I know I'll struggle, I will do my best to never get tired. I know Chicago will be gone tomorrow. Let's cash in on our thin blood and have another one. I didn't think I had a chance. I had a hunch and lost a lot of my friends. That's a great song. You really see Jeff Rosenstock's pop, punk, ska chops come through on that. The rest of the album doesn't do a lot for me, but that song's absolutely fantastic. Go listen to that one, and then listen to the rest of the Bomb the Music Industry albums. This is the only one that I don't absolutely love. Dinosaur Jr., Where You Been, 1993.
There's no going back to that. So numb can't even react. Didn't say it's not okay, but we are dealing the same way. I ain't telling you a secret. I ain't telling you goodbye.
This was the biggest post from the week. I got retweeted by the Dinosaur Jr. account, which has about 80,000 followers, something like that. I got a number of responses. It was really fun to see. If you like my posts on Twitter, I'm going to say it. Don't just like them. Don't just respond. Retweet them. Quote tweet them. I always ask the question, what do you appreciate about this album? Quote tweet them with what you appreciate. Tell the world. Don't just tell me. Spread the news. It's really fun when people engage at that level. It was really fun to watch. I couldn't respond to everybody because it was too busy, but it was really fun to see. This is prime Dinosaur Jr. A lot of people think this is their best album. I would not argue with somebody calling this their best album. One of their best songs is on here, Stop Choppin', I believe is what it is. I love this. I love the heavily distorted guitars that somehow still feel melodic. This is unique for, I think it feels unique from a lot of the other alternative rock that was out there in the early 90s. I think just because it is so guitar driven, I think you had maybe a little less of that. It's great. I love Dinosaur Jr. I don't know what it is about them. I feel infected by their music. It just gets into my earworm hole and I just love it. I go back to it really often. So Where You Been by Dinosaur Jr. from 1993. Fair, Disappearing World from 2010. This was the second album by the Aaron Sprinkle-led group, and this one is very good. If you like Aaron Sprinkle, that's the reason to check this out. I like the first one more, I'm not going to lie, but this was still a lot of people really like this album. At least one person called it their favorite pop rock album of the 2010s, or one of their favorites, so clearly it's still good. There's something about that first one that stands out to me more. Fair, Disappearing World, 2010. Brian Fallon's Sleepwalker from 2018. It was his second of his 3 solo albums that he's released so far. And this has some nice rootsy soul goodness at the beginning of the album, and throughout it, there's some organ here and there. If you like Gaslight Anthem, you will like this. Go check it out if you like Gaslight Anthem stuff. All right, this is the part of the show where I get into some lists. I have, like I said, there was a lot of stuff I just didn't get to this week. Meat is Murder by The Smiths. Further Seems Forever. The Wonder Years compilation came out. There was an album by Big Thief. The Autumn Film. The Foo Fighters. The Weeknd. Over the Rhine. Fall Out Boy. There was a Passion album that I probably wouldn't have listened to anyway, but somehow it's made its way into my collection. Anchor and Braille, which was new to me, and a band called Gwen Stacy, which was new to me. I prefer Gwen Stacy from the comics. That's just me. Again, I just didn't get a chance to listen to those. I'll try this weekend, but just other things going on. Been doing a lot of PFR listening. That cut into some of my extra listening time throughout the week, so I didn't get to all of those. And, the reality is I think I do occasionally I can't talk about everything. This is going to be close to 40 minutes long because I still got a couple things to mention. So that's the way it goes. I might just have to do that. And hopefully people I'm trying to get some of the personal stories out of, or just, why an album means something to me personally. I'm not a musician. I can't play anything. So I can't tell you why the production's really good on this, or the melody worked really well, or some of those technical things. I'm going to talk about it from my perspective. And, hopefully people can relate to that. I think I have a pretty weird sensibility when it comes to music, but I also know what I like, and I know how to at least talk about why I like it. And, I guess I will say a lot of times it comes out as, well, I just think it sounds good. And that's going to happen. But anyway, I'm not going to probably be able to get to everything, especially, man, I know I've said it a lot. When we get into the middle of the year, there are so many albums. There's a couple days, the 23rd and the 24th, there is, I think, over 25 albums on those 2 days. And that's in February. And then you get into June and July, and there's going to be weeks where there's probably going to be 100. It gets so crazy during that time. I will do my best to keep up on the Twitter posts. I swear I will. Just with other things going on and family life, I don't have the time for all of it. So we'll see. I'm going to start grouping some of them together too. Some of these bigger days. If there's 4 albums that came out that are albums that I like, but you're going to start to see the stuff that's really important to me is going to bubble up to the top. I'm going to try and group some of these as much as I can. I still run out of characters to do it, but it is what it is. So I'll try and do my best to deal with the Twitter nonsense. I still love it. I know I'll say it at the end of the show. I love the engagement. I love when people respond. And so yeah. All right. That's that. I just found a typo in my, what is that supposed to be? I have the Googies. Oh, it's the Fugees. Good transition. That's everything from February 5th through February 11th. Next week, these are posts. Again, I'm not saying this is what will be on the show, but these are posts that I will put out on social media. And like I just said, there's an album from the Fugees. I think it's The Score. That'll get a post during the week. Another post from the 77s, Sandra McCracken, Shai Lynn, John Coltrane, Aunt Betty's Ford, Susan Ashton. 2 albums by Bomb the Music Industry, 1 celebrating a bigger anniversary. Excited about talk about that. So that's 3 in 2 weeks. I do love when you see bands that just kind of consistently release around the same time. Always super interesting to me that they got on that cycle and they can't break it. Always very, very interesting to me. Another one by Elvis Costello. That's a good example. We've seen a lot of Elvis Costello ones. Another one by The Selector. Again, those are the 2 albums that I kind of wish I wouldn't have spent as much time on, because the ones next week are so much better. Oh well, it's the way it goes. All right, you want to hear me say something wrong? It's Los Fabulos Cadillacs. I I know I messed that up. You got to be just sitting there listening going, he is an idiot. He is genuinely one of the stupidest people. Why am I listening to this moron? Sorry, I messed that up. Michelle Toombs, Father John Misty, Gunger, Local Natives, Ben Rector, I think that's how you say his last name, The Smoking Popes, Brandy Carlisle, Miles Davis, Daniel Amos, PAX 217, The Damned, Cross Movement, and Radiohead. And then there's two of the big ones that I'm really, Copeland is another one. They're celebrating a big anniversary. It's like 5 years. And then two that I'm really excited to talk about, Trojan Records, the Trojan Records collection Tighten Up 2, Volume 2, and the MC5 album. I'm really excited to talk about those. That'll be interesting to see if I can those are older albums that I don't know if I can review, and I don't have a personal connection to them outside of I know they're historically amazing. So that'll be interesting to see what I can come up with that. So anyway, those are posts that you can look forward to next week and some of the things that'll probably be talked about on the show. So thanks again for joining me. Just as a reminder, the music at the beginning and the end of this show is the instrumental version of Sing It Out at Street Level by Peg and the Rejected, which is members of one of my favorite bands, the Dingees. They have a bunch of different formations. Peg and the Rejected is them doing ska songs, and really great. They let people use their music for free, so that's why I use it on the show. And I love Peg and the Rejected. I love the Dingees. I love ska, so that's why I use it as my bumper music. Thank you so much for joining me this week. Let me know what you think. What did I get right? What did I get wrong? Why are some of these albums standouts to you? What were your favorites from the week? You can find me on Twitter at Caleb the Spy, no spaces. I'm also on Instagram at Caleb the Spy with underscores in between the words. And you can always email me at calebthespypodcast@gmail.com. No spaces or underscores. If there are albums that should be on my calendar because they are worth celebrating, please let me know. Subscribe and share the podcast if you're so inclined. Leave a rating or a review. And again, I say it every week. Thanks so much if you engage with me at all on social media. I really appreciate it. I do put a lot of time into setting up those posts, and I love seeing people react. It's always very exciting. Thanks again so much for listening. And if you listen to any or all of this show, I messed that up. So sorry, but thanks for listening. We will talk to you next week.